You start a company with your best friend. You split everything 50-50. You promise each other nothing will ever come between you. But the real answer is far stranger. Somewhere between your first customer and your first big check, a silent war begins. And almost nobody warns you it's coming. You think the fight will be about the idea. It won't be. You think the fight will be about money. It's closer, but still wrong. The real fight is about control. Who gets to decide what happens next? Here's the part that surprises people. This isn't new. It isn't unique to tech. It isn't even unique to business. Every time two or more people build something valuable together, and then someone else puts money into it, the same pattern shows up. Ownership splits from power. And once that split happens, it rarely reverses. Think about your own life for a second. Have you ever built something with a friend, a small project, a side hustle, a plan? Did someone else's involvement change how decisions got made? Did help arrive with a hidden opinion attached to it? Let's go back to where this pattern was first measured properly. Not guessed at. Measured across thousands of real companies. A Harvard Business School researcher named Noam Wasserman spent years studying founders. Thousands of them, across industries, across decades. He tracked what happened after a startup took outside investment. His finding was blunt. By the time a company reaches its fourth round of funding, the majority of original founders are no longer running it as CEO. Not because they failed, often because they succeeded. Success brought in more money. More money brought in more investors. More investors meant more votes on the board. And more votes on the board meant the person who started the company slowly lost the right to run it. This is the part your brain doesn't expect. You assume building the thing gives you permanent authority over the thing. It doesn't. Ownership and control are not the same. You can own 10% of a company and still control it if the terms are right. You can own 40% and still get removed from your own boardroom if the terms are wrong. The percentage on paper feels like the whole story. It's only the opening line. So how does that actually happen? How does money quietly turn into control? It happens through a contract. A quiet, unglamorous contract, signed months before any real conflict shows up. Nobody argues over a term sheet the way they argue over a firing. The document feels procedural. Boring even. That's exactly why it works. Two researchers at the University of Chicago, Stephen Kaplan and Per Stromberg, studied hundreds of these venture capital agreements in detail. What they found was that investors rarely take a majority of the company outright. That would look aggressive. Founders would resist it or walk away entirely. Instead, investors take something subtler. Board seats, veto rights, approval requirements on hiring, firing, spending, and selling. On paper, the founder still owns the company. In practice, the founder can no longer move without permission. The company still carries the founder's name. It no longer carries only the founder's decisions. This is the twist nobody prepares you for. The war for control isn't won in a dramatic confrontation, months or years later, in front of a shocked founder. It's won quietly, in a document signed while everyone was still smiling, back when the relationship still felt like a partnership between equals. Now here's where it gets even stranger, because this isn't only a business story. It's a psychology story, and it reaches into every unequal relationship you've ever had. A researcher at UC Berkeley named Dr. Keltner spent decades studying what power does to people once they have it. His conclusion challenges the story you've probably absorbed from movies and headlines. Power doesn't just corrupt the person who already has it. Power changes how people treat the person who no longer has it. Once an investor gains structural control, even a fair-minded one starts making decisions the founder wouldn't have made. Not out of malice. Out of a different set of incentives sitting quietly underneath the friendship. The founder built the company to matter. The investor funded it to return a multiple. Those two goals sound aligned in the beginning. They are not the same goal, and the gap between them widens with every dollar invested. Pause on that for a second. You didn't build something to make it disappear into a rushed acquisition 3 years early, just when it was starting to feel like yours. But the person funding you has a fund with a 10-year clock and other investors above them demanding returns on a schedule that has nothing to do with your dream. When those two timelines collide, Only one side usually has the legal right to force the outcome. This is where an old idea from economics quietly explains the entire pattern, and it's older than any startup you can name. In 1976, two economists, Michael Jensen and William Meckling, published a theory that still shapes every venture deal signed today. They called it the agency problem. Whenever one person, the principal, hands resources to another person, the agent, to act on their behalf, their interests eventually diverge. It's almost mathematical. The investor is the principal. The founder becomes the agent. Even though the founder started as the sole owner, the moment outside capital enters, the founder is managing someone else's expectations as much as their own original vision. You've probably felt a smaller version of this yourself, even far outside of business. Anyone who has ever taken a loan from a parent to start something small knows this feeling in miniature. The money helps immediately, but the money also arrives with opinions. And opinions, given enough leverage, quietly become conditions. A gift starts to behave like a contract, even when nobody ever calls it one. This same pattern shows up long before venture capital existed. Go back further. Renaissance merchant partnerships, the ones who financed trade routes and long sea voyages, structured their arrangements almost identically. The person who supplied the ship and the crew rarely supplied the capital. The person who supplied the capital rarely sailed. And when a voyage returned successful, the argument was never about whether the trip happened. It was about who had the contractual right to decide the next one. Historians who study these merchant partnerships describe the same imbalance centuries before the word startup ever existed. Skill built the thing. Capital decided its future. The names changed across centuries. The structure never did. So does the founder always lose? Not always. Some don't. And the ones who keep control usually did something specific, long before they needed it. The founders who keep control tend to negotiate structural protections early, before they're desperate for the check, back when they still have leverage to say no. Dual-class voting shares. Founder-friendly board ratios. Clear, pre-agreed thresholds for who approves what, and under what conditions those thresholds can change. Wasserman's research found something almost paradoxical here. Founders who raised slightly less money, but on better terms, often kept more long-term control than founders who raised huge rounds on investor-favorable terms. More cash up front, less power later. It's a trade almost nobody explains clearly at the exact moment the money is offered, because in that moment, only the cash feels real. Here's the modern mirror, the part that reaches past business entirely and into your own life. Every time you accept help, you're quietly negotiating a trade between speed and control. A parent covering your rent while you study. A partner covering bills while you build something new on the side. A mentor opening doors you couldn't open yourself. None of these people are villains in this story. Most of them genuinely want you to succeed and mean every word of it. But every input of resources comes attached to an invisible thread of influence. And the terms of that thread are almost always set at the very beginning, quietly, long before anyone involved thinks they'll ever need them. That's why the real question was never simply who wins between co-founders and investors. It was always about who defines the terms while the relationship still feels friendly, while nobody has any reason to fight yet. Once trust turns into disagreement, it's already too late to rewrite the rules. The rules were written back when nobody thought they'd need them, and contracts, unlike friendships, don't soften with time. Think about every version of this pattern hiding in plain sight around you. The family business, where one sibling put in the money and another put in the years. The marriage, where one partner's income quietly became the deciding vote on every major decision. The friendship, where one person fronted the cash for a shared apartment and somehow ended up choosing the couch, the roommate, and the rules. None of it looked like a takeover at the time. It rarely does. Notice how quiet the shift always is. Nobody announces it. There's no single meeting where control formally changes hands. It happens across dozens of small moments. A decision that used to be yours alone now needs a second signature. A plan that used to be discussed becomes a plan that gets approved. You keep doing the same work you always did. But somewhere along the way, doing the work stopped being the same thing as deciding the direction of the work. That gap is the whole story. It's why two people can point to the exact same company, the exact same relationship, the exact same shared apartment, and describe two completely different realities. One person still feels like a builder. The other quietly became the one who signs off on what gets built. None of this means you should refuse help. Refusing help has its own cost, and most great things never get built alone. The point isn't to distrust every hand that reaches out to you. The point is to notice that the hand rarely arrives empty. It arrives holding terms, spoken or unspoken, and those terms are easiest to set fairly on the day you still have the power to say no. Wait until you need the help badly enough, and the terms stop being a negotiation. They become a condition you simply accept. So, next time someone offers you the thing that would fix your biggest problem right now, whether it's money, a favor, a loan, or an opportunity, ask yourself one quiet question before you say yes. Not what you're gaining, what you're agreeing to give up control of later, without realizing it, at a moment you can't yet see coming. You start a company with your best friend. You split everything 50-50. But the real answer was never about the split. It was about who wrote the terms before either of you thought you'd need them. If you were building a startup, who should have more control, the co-founders who created the company or the investors who provided the funding? Share your opinion in the comments. Let's hear your thoughts.